totems in front of our community hall really depict some of the areas of the impact of the federal government or the regime of the federal government under the Indian Act. On one side, there are figurines that are faceless, which states that under the Indian Act, you have no cultural identity, you have no say-so in what decisions that are made that affect your lives, your children, your home life, your community. And on the other side, when we achieved self-government, the other figurines have their cultural identity restored or reaffirmed. And I think this is part of the backbone of self-government, is that there's pride restored back to the Sechelt Native people. There is a feeling of self-worth. These are the things that fall in line with achieving self-government.
A lot of the Indian bands across Canada are trying to get total control and self-determination. We are totally independent from the federal government right now. We have control of our lands, our finances, our membership. Whenever the Aboriginal rights or whatever are entrenched into the Constitution, we'll go along with that too, because we've got everything we want right now. And self-government is different for every Indian band across Canada. The type we have right now suits the Sechelt people. We're butted up against a non-native community. So we had to design and develop our self-government to deal with that and the people in our lands.
We always had self-government as a people, always. It hasn't differed very much in the years. It's just become a little bit more maybe sophisticated, a little bit more. We still have the culture and traditions within that self-government, and that's how it's geared to for our people, specifically for the Sechelt people.
I'll give you the four main bands of Sechelt right now. Chinechin is right up the head of Jervis Inlet, and they call those people alot Chinechin. And Zonai is about 10 miles from the head, and they call those people alot Zonai. The people from Egmont all the way around Egmanton Channel, Penna Harbor, Sechelt to Roberts Creek, and halfway up to Paul River, they call those people Sechelt. The people from Nares Arm, Sechelt Inlet, Salmon Inlet, Porpoise Bay, they call those people Tawonk. Prior to us coming to the residential school, I started residential school when I was 5 years old. I didn't know a word of English. We spent our early years up at Jervis Inlet, Deserted Bay, and right up the head of Jervis, which we call Chinechin. We grew up in Deserted Bay in cedar shake houses, plugged with newspapers in the cracks and a little mud and fire in the center of the building with a hole that's directly on top of the fire. That's the kind of buildings that we lived in way back.
course, British Columbia would be in the end of the line, where the last two supposedly get Christianized. And they came to the province and they drew lots. These different clergy from the Catholics, from the Anglican, from whatever. They drew lots to find out where they were going to go. Rather than fight each other, I guess they drew lots. We got the Catholics, of course. A lot of the northern people got the Anglicans, the United Church.
The community spirit with our people them days was just tremendous. Everybody helped one another. Give you an example, there was an old couple that could hardly walk, paddled from Penna Harbor to Sechelt with all their goods and supplies on their canoe. Our young members of the band at that time saw them coming in. Rather than get off the canoe and wobble up the beach, they picked up the whole canoe with all their materials and supplies, and it packed the whole canoe and all up to the flat surface where they can get out and be comfortable. A lot of the conferences and workshops that we went to with our neighboring bands and other, with the BCN chiefs and the Assembly of First Nations, always, the biggest request was always to do away with the Indian Act and to become more self-sufficient. What we did after one of those workshops or conferences that we had, we decided to replace the Indian Act and more or less establish our own constitution.
Under the Indian Act, we practically achieved all we could, except we did not own the land. And that was what got us into the dilemma that we are in for probably the most of the 70s. We couldn't call in people with big ideas because the Indian Act stated that if you leased land, it reverted back to the Crown. And then once it reverted back to the Crown, we did not have control over it.
The Sechelt Indian Band has tried for several years to commence that operations of the gravel extractions on Sechelt territories. After achieving self-government, the agreements were finally drafted out and signed the very next day when the proclamation of the Sechelt Indian Band had become law. The Self-Government Act had become law on that specific day. There's a multi-million-dollar gravel extraction. It's not only on Sechelt Indian land, it's within the provincial Crown territories that are surrounding the band lands. And that's another plus, because after they start extracting gravel off the provincial Crown land, they have to cross Sechelt territories, and that is another transportation fee, which is another spin-off and another profit for the Sechelt Indian Band. The Sechelt Indian Band initiated a business venture which fell in line with the air service or air transportation business. we acquired several float planes and set up our business. At first it originated between Nanaimo Harbor and Vancouver Harbor with the air service and transportation of passengers and air mail or courier service.
If we did this on computer, all we would have to enter would be one journal entry for audio sound, for example, going back to voice number one. It would automatically update their account. It would automatically update.
The people that are taking that small business program are people that are specifically going into business for themselves, okay? They had to know what type of business they were going in for. And it's a 6-month course, so at the end of that time, they should know how to run a business. It's really good because in my time, we didn't have this. Like, I was the first Indian to go to high school here. In my day, we weren't encouraged beyond grade 8. There was just nothing for us.
At this site here, everybody has been here since the program started. They're all members of the Sechelt Indian Band. We've all used the resource, native food fishing nets to capture food for the family. Our Chinook salmon are spent anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks before being released from the sea pens. When the fish leave the site here, the majority of them travel within 150 miles radius of the facility, at which time they're picked up in the various sport, commercial, and native food fisheries along the coast. I think our relationship with fisheries is first class. We have a real good understanding on what has to be done in co-management. When I talk about co-management, I'm talking about the band and fisheries sitting down together and having various meetings to talk about what we can do to improve the management of the area. And the way that self-government has really come into effect is being able to negotiate from government to government instead of having a lot of middlemen in between and not getting any results.
Is there a word, alot? Just the C.
It's just flying.
Yeah. So you're not sure about alot? Okay.
We have about 30 elders that come in every 2 weeks, Tuesdays, that are writing the Sechelt language book right now. They have already put one book together, but they're working on a dictionary and some of the other parts of the book. They come in, we have a linguist that comes in from UBC. They go through the language, he writes it down, and that's the book that will be used to teach the language to our next generation. In order for the Sechelt people to retain their culture, we have to know our language and be able to speak it. And speak the legends and tell the stories of our past. We don't have too many elders left, so that's what we have to make sure that it's documented so they can teach it to the future generations.
Another important part of self-government would fall in line with the responsibility of developing all the cultural programs. We have a Sechelt native artist who does all the training and skills development and not only handling the tools, but he teaches them various art designs and introduces them to different methods of carving.
All right, here's a two-headed sea serpent, and here's one of the sea serpent's heads right here, and his paw right here, and here's a hand, and here's a face, another hand right here, and we're gonna have some scales on here too. It's not carved out yet, but we're not to that stage yet. Another head right here is a sea serpent.
Over the years, the Sechelt people brought back the first annual war canoe races. This was in 1987. And Chief Tom Paul had taken on that responsibility to work with the youth in joint efforts with myself to bring back that traditional war canoe plan, you know, and it was quite an inspiration to see all the youth group, both boys and girls, to get excited about it, because it brings back their pride, their positive self-image, and their feeling of self-worth when they really get involved and start taking the training and all the necessary things that have to be recognized while you're in the war canoe competition.
Some of the bands, native bands across Canada, were pretty critical of what steps the Sechelt people had taken. They figured that, you know, because it was a delegated authority from the federal government, it wasn't good enough for them. But all those powers that we got from the federal government gave us total control and autonomy from the restrictions of the Indian Act. Like they didn't understand our federal transfer payment. We explained to them about how we are in control of our funding right from April 1st every year. We have total control of that. Our lands, our membership, our capital dollars, they don't even get them. Not like the Sechelt Indian Band does. By the time they get their self-government, I think we'll be 10, 20 years ahead of them.
I think the high point of that criticism fell in line with some of the native Indian bands or the native Indian leaders. Was at that time they were trying to negotiate or deal with the federal government to entrench self-government within the Constitution of Canada. This is one of the reasons why they said that the Sechelt Indian Band was the lead buffalo jumper or the sellout and all these other labels they attached to the Sechelt people, was that they said that we were hindering or delaying or sabotaging their negotiation table by independently going our separate ways to achieve self-government. The Sechelt initiative doesn't affect anyone because the self-government for Sechelt people is Sechelt specific.
When most Indian people talk about Indian self-government, they're talking about having their own structures, laws, governmental systems, controls, everything they want for their own people. And generally, there's no difficulty with that. And Sechelt, under the federal legislation, have achieved exactly that. There is a pure Indian government having Indian laws, dealing with Indian people on Indian land, period. You can't find anyone in Canada to go in and point to that part of it and say the province is involved. There's municipal similarities. There are none whatsoever. It's pure Indian government. And most Indian people in the country could probably look at that and maybe get something for themselves from what Sechelt are doing in that particular aspect.
We own the land, we have title to the land, we are a legal entity, we are now a quasi-municipality. For the sake of the non-Indian, we say we are like a municipality. But in essence, we are a third order of government. Sechelt is prepared for comprehensive land claim negotiation to completion. Sechelt is prepared through legislation to have the right to self-government entrenched into the Constitution. Sechelt has the power and authority to look after itself as a third order of government, encompassing all these three, which in total make native self-government. If the land claims were settled now, Sechelt would have a few $1 million in the bank. We'd have third-party jurisdiction over everything within that territory. In other words, what we'd have is territorial integrity. There will be an invisible line around the territory that we claim, the Sechelt's comprehensive Aboriginal lands. But they will be still governed by whichever jurisdiction has control at the moment. But we will be added into that jurisdictional authority. If it's fishing, if it's logging, if it's mining, or residential use, industrial use, commercial use, we will be one of the authorities to look after it within that territory. So, if more bands followed that kind of a system, the sustainable development of this country, protecting the environment, would be there, because each group would be looking after their areas. And then the province still makes the rules, the federal government still makes the rules, but now we have a cohesive, cooperative team managing this land. And that's what it's all about.
I guess there was a fear amongst the other Aboriginal groups that their rights would be automatically taken away, or if they weren't entrenched in the Constitution. I don't know, I don't think the federal government would want to change something that's working really good for the native population. It's working good for the Sechelt Indian Band, you know, our self-government, so I don't think they'd want to damage their relationship with us or any of their Aboriginal people. I think where the Sechelt Indian Band is going now is just going to get better and better, because by the time, within 5 years, I think we will be fully developed. We'll have major economic developments in place. All our Sechelt Band members will be fully employed. You know, you have to have a job to have pride and self-respect, and that's our goal, is to make sure that our people are, you know, proud of who they are and where they live. Our band membership and our children will be hopefully all fully educated, that they can go anywhere and, you know, look anybody in the eye and say, you know, I'm a Sechelt Indian and I can, you know, do anything I want, or take a place in society that I'm proud of. That's our goal, is to make sure that our children are taken care of. I think it's the long-term goal of all our chiefs and council, was to make sure that our people are well looked after. And I think it's happening.